Yeah, it looked like Project Marvel done passed. Um, that's fine and all, and it could be beneficial to San Antonio. It could help San Antonio in many ways, I'm sure, especially when it comes to tourism, hospitality, which is the city's number one cash cow. And then, of course, they approved the rodeo plan for the grounds where the AT&T Center, where the Frost Bank Center sits. I'm sorry, the Frost Bank Center sits along with the Joe and Harry Freeman Coliseum. And the rodeo plan, from what I read, sounds good, especially for the east side. So hopefully, it helps that they do something to help that area. But what San Antonio need is jobs and a more educated class here. And I don't just mean education through school, but people also need to educate themselves outside of school. And I think that's the problem we have in this country, especially in poor inner city areas where people live in poverty and stuff, where if you're a person who's not an intellect, um, you may not be too concerned about politics. You're not worried about ordering books online, educating yourself, you know, um, anything like that. You're not worried about watching YouTube videos to where you have experts on there who can teach you certain things, different things from math to maybe how to fix a heater. But that's if you have internet access at all. But some people have it through their phone, but some people are only concerned about bullshit. Some people are only concerned about shit that don't matter. And so back to my point, a lot of people, in this city, we need a better educated class. People, especially in the inner city poor districts, need to start educating themselves as well as educating their children outside of school. Like I say, it's books online you can order. It's people on YouTube you can listen to that can teach you something. It's all kind of stuff out there now with the technology. Many of you have phones. I'm sure y'all have some Wi-Fi internet access, because you just can't depend on the government. You just can't depend on the school system to educate your children or give them the real education that they need, especially people who live in the inner city and live in poverty. And a lot of these school districts probably are not funded at the same rate as the wealthier school districts. So you got to look at the resources. And I think the schools are funded partly through property taxes. So you look at the inner city school districts where the poor people live. It's a different story. It's something else. But what San Antonio needs is jobs. You know, we need more than just um, service industry jobs. In order for this city to thrive, really thrive the way that it should, we need jobs here to where people can thrive, jobs that pay a living wage. You know, um, Maybe the city one day should look at lifting this minimum wage. I think I read in the past some cities have done that. Um, I don't know. I have to look into that again. And we need to stop this bullshit of what's been going on in the city for years. And I've said this before and I say it again. It's a book called I don't I don't feel like getting it, but it's a book called Mexican American: The Ambivalent Minority. And the reason why I'm bringing this up because in the book it talks about the racist practices that's been practiced in San Antonio for so long. The city thriving and depending on cheap Mexican labor um, to make the owners of this country more richer. You know what I'm saying? People who can fund the politicians' campaign. You know, it's a story out, an article, I think, in New York Times, whoever, where a woman talked about this, and former Mayor Ron Neuenberg had said she was wrong about some things, that the city is changing, the city is working to change. But I read in an article, and this is my word, true to my word. I might have a hard time finding it if I looked for it because it's been a while since I read it. But former Mayor Ron Neuenberg said in the interview that when he got into office, he didn't plan on addressing generational poverty, which don't surprise me because the politicians before him wasn't trying to address generational poverty or change or dramatically change the city for the better. Neither was Ivy Taylor, and I supported her. I wanted her to support her, a black woman in office here in San Antonio, Texas, out of all places, a predominantly Mexican city. You know, I was happy to see that, but she wasn't dedicated to making real progress in this city that needed to be made. Like she called Ron Neuenberg liberal Ron, and I don't think it did no good because I don't think former Mayor Ron Neuenberg done anything to drastically change this city. Like for years they didn't want to do nothing about it. They don't want to do nothing about it. Like downtown could have been drastically changed years ago. Like look at Austin. I remember a time when Austin didn't have all those buildings in their downtown that they have now. I remember as far back as the late 90s, even in 99, passing through there, coming back and forth to San Antonio. Even in 99, Austin didn't have all those buildings there that they have now. And the reason why San Antonio downtown haven't reached that level, or the city haven't reached that level as a whole, because no mayor, nobody seriously done anything to pursue better jobs to come here, you know. And then you got to look at, and I'm not saying this to be stereotypical, and I'm not saying this to be a racist because I don't hate people because of their skin color, but I have to tell the truth. It's not only what politicians and city leaders have done that to hold this city back throughout the years. As far as education, you got to look at, we always had a large Mexican population here. And to be real, not to be disrespectful, because what's true for them is true for a lot of us in the black community also. We deal with some of the same issues. I have to be real about that. But we live in a predominantly Mexican city. A lot of them, for so long in the past, all the way up until now, many of them didn't finish school. A lot of them come from poverty, grow up in poverty. Um, a lot of them had children young, and a lot of them don't even finish high school, or so they don't pursue higher education. And if you do have some that graduate from high school, that don't mean, we all know just because somebody maybe graduate from high school, that don't mean they gonna automatically or ever pursue higher education. And since they're the majority here, and and a lot of things impact their community from within and externally, that's what it is. That's one of the reasons why San Antonio is one of the poorest cities in America. It has a high poverty rate, and has had one for years, and still continues to have a high poverty rate to this day. And this is not no attack on the Mexican community, because there's some things true for the black community, because we always had, I can't really tell you how high the black dropout rate has gotten, but we dealt with high school, youngsters dropping out of high school in the black community. We dealt with that. We dealt with people in middle school or high school reading on the elementary school level, whatever they call it. We dealt with as black people teenage pregnancy, and of course many of us are still poor and many of us come from poverty. But we're not the majority of this city. We're a small percentage, like 6.9 to 7%. It's always been like that. And speaking of black people, and I think this goes along with the jobs thing. The reason why I think San Antonio, one of the main reasons why San Antonio, I don't want to say huge, never had a huge, but never had a nice sizable, I say never had a nice sizable black population here, is because of the jobs, especially a lot of the jobs in the past not coming here. Because if you look at cities outside, especially cities outside of the South, like New York, LA, Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, Washington, D.C., um, probably Cleveland, you know what I'm saying? Gary, Indiana. If you look at the big cities outside of the South that have a nice sizable black population, is because a lot of those cities had jobs, where a lot of blacks migrated there. And of course, they was escaping the harsh racism from the South, or what they was going through in the South with Jim Crow. But besides that, one of the main factors that drove them to go to that cities was the jobs, the opportunity. And San Antonio never had that. Like Houston always had oil, natural resources. I hear Dallas is, leading, I think, in technology and banking and finance, stuff like that. And Dallas have a lot of corporations there, Fortune 500 companies there, as well as Houston. The reason why we don't have a lot of Fortune 500 companies here in San Antonio and lacking a strong corporate base, because the way this city has been run, of the owners of this city wanting to keep the jobs out. Now, some people say this is not true, but in the book Mexican American, the ambivalent minority, it got a part talking about San Antonio where I think Ford or somebody wanted to build a plant down here. Instead, they moved it to Arlington in the Dallas Fort Worth area. And they wanted to keep the unions out of San Antonio. And they said in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, but it said in so many words, the city leaders or the owners, whatever, felt that unions would affect the cheap Mexican labor. And that's no shot at Mexican people. I'm saying that because I don't want Mexicans feel like I'm blaming them or I'm trying to take shots at them, because I'm not. Because I see the bigger picture. I know the Mexicans, especially the illegal immigrants, are not at fault for this as far as how the system is run, but they happen to be the ones who get exploited by the system and how things is run, by being underpaid and being, probably treated any kind of way on the job, depending on where they work or what field they're in. And so, and I believe it, because unions, I think, always been a problem for this country as a whole. I think the oligarchs, that's one of the reasons why a lot of jobs been outsourced out of America, because you send jobs to Mexico or China, you don't have to deal with unions. You don't have to deal with people demanding higher pay. You don't have to deal with people who are demanding to be treated fairly, who's demanding to be treated right, and who's demanding safe work conditions and all that. You don't have to you deal with a lot of that if you outsource the job somewhere else, where you can pay the people way less and probably get away with a lot more than what you could here in America. But one of the reasons why I think they didn't want unions here in San Antonio, one of the reasons why, besides the cheap Mexican labor, probably because they didn't want unions affecting the political landscape. And I haven't done no research on this. I need to. I need to do it. But I wouldn't be surprised in the past in other cities if unions had if unions played a big part in things happening politically in other cities. I got to do my research. I'm not going to speak like it's automatic facts, but whoever see this video can probably tell me. But I bet any kind of money, if I do my research, I'll find that unions have had some impact on the political landscape in the city or state where they was located in. And they didn't want that in San Antonio. And they still don't want it to this day. I heard they let, well, not heard, I read they let Toyota come in because they had private unions. And if it's a private union, it's in-house, it's within the company. I guess they don't want unions affecting political landscape, affecting things, affecting other industries in San Antonio that's not paying nobody anything. You can't survive on food service jobs or being a janitor or whatever. It costs to live out here. Food prices are rising. But the city won't put into effect its own minimum wage, and the state of Texas don't want to raise the minimum wage. It's reasons for that I'm not going to get into. They say it's because it's the low cost of living here. Bullshit. You don't pay nobody, especially in San Antonio. You don't want to pay nobody nothing. And for years, you done had a lot of Mexicans come in, a lot of illegal immigrants come in, and you can pay them next to nothing and get away with it unless you somehow get caught or get busted. But if not, you can pay them next to nothing and get away with it. And if you're not underhanding they pay, you can set the tone for the city politics to where, because of this, it's affordable to live here. And then you figure we'll just pay by the minimum wage, whatever. So it's crazy, but I done talked long enough, because the point I wanted to make was that San Antonio needs jobs. San Antonio needs a bigger, more expansive educated class here. San Antonio needs to become more progressive city. And when I say progressive, I'm not so much talking about liberal, like people talk about Democrats and giving people handouts and all this shit. I'm not talking about giving people handouts, especially people who don't want to work or do nothing with their life. I'm talking about being more progressive with jobs, businesses, education, you know, um, having jobs that pay higher wages. Of course, I'm not saying everything should be perfect. Now, of course, in the real world, nothing's never perfect, but you can always strive to do more. You can always strive to do a lot better, and this city can do better. San Antonio's a big city with like over 1.5 million people. This city, if you drive through this city, go all over town to to different districts in this city has a lot of potential. If you look around, you paying attention, San Antonio has a lot of potential as a big city, but it continues to hold itself back behind cheap Mexican labor and not wanting to pay nobody nothing. And they don't want nothing that's going to threaten that. They don't want nothing to happen that's going to threaten that. But tell the truth, I could be wrong. I want to make some predictions, but I could be wrong. I think the way this city has been run for years is it's starting to come to a head. And I get the sense at City Hall from the stories I'm reading, from the news videos that I see, I'm starting to sense that they probably figuring they have to do something different. And with this Project Marvel thing, this is a part of it. I don't think it's the only plan that they have. I don't think this is it, but I think it's a part of it. And because they figure they have to make some changes to San Antonio, they have to change this city in some way. The city's become too big, too spread out. And then you look at downtown. Downtown ain't shit right now. Downtown ain't nothing. It's a bunch of construction going on. I walk by Travis Park. I see homeless people hanging out. I go to work in the morning. I see people sleeping at Travis Park on the steps and shit, or see people sleeping on the bench. What where you at the bus stop. It's crazy. You see litter everywhere. They have people who work downtown that clean that shit up, but you see litter everywhere, and you be like, man, our downtown is pathetic. And that's because, with San Antonio for so many years annexing and growing to the north, a lot of businesses went out that way and left the central city. Or if they were new to San Antonio, just didn't go to the central city altogether and built out that way, built where the white folks was at, built where the money is at. So I sense that they figure they have to do something different. And I think Project Marvel, if done right, probably can help out far as tourism, because I think that's what they want help with. That's why they want to expand the Henry B. Gonzalez Convention Center. And I can't speak on what kind of jobs they'll have. A lot of them probably be service related jobs, especially like hotels, which those jobs don't pay nothing. Everybody knows those jobs don't pay shit unless you up a supervisor or management or something. People know this. So we'll see what goes on. So Santa's Project Marvel got passed, it got approved, which is good. But San Antonio needs jobs and a more expansive educated class. I'm out. Heru lives. Peace.